Hi, everyone. My name is Mickey Hudson, and I am an educator for SVP Worldwide. SVP stands for Singer Viking FAF, which is the parent company, and I am an educator in the FAF and Viking division. I'm here with Nancy Bronstein, who is a fellow educator. And Nancy, why don't you tell us a little bit about your sewing history so we can get to know you?
Okay, so I've been sewing for many, many years. I kind of choke on it because actually, probably half a century. I learned as a little girl. My mother was a garment maker and quilter. One of my earliest memories was probably I was about 2 or 3 years old, and my job was to put my finger on the string when she made a string quilt. You know, they were not the string quilts that people do, these tiny piecing, but instead of quilting it, you had cord that you pulled it up and you tied a knot. Maybe it's a knotted quilt. I'm not sure the exact terminology, but my job was to put my finger on the cord so she could tie a double knot, and I would go from spot to spot. So I started out as a garment maker. I didn't get into quilting when I was a kid. I started making doll clothes and then my own clothes. My mother made my clothes until it became totally uncool, and I told her to stop. I wish I had those clothes she made for me back then, but I don't. They are long gone. And then over the years, I got into doing a lot of other types of sewing. My typical sort of mode of operating is that I get interested in a certain type of sewing and I take a deep dive into it. Like I get obsessed about that, and I do just that for like 18 months or 2 years, something like that. Like all I want to do is make bags. And then it'll be all I want to do is quilt, or all I want to do is go back to making garments, or all I want to do is something else, home deck. Although now that since we've been working for SVP, we have to broaden our horizons and make things that are representative of the new techniques and new machines that are coming out. So I don't do that deep dive thing, but that's what I used to do in the past. So I've gotten a lot of different types of sewing under my belt. I have a lot of different interests that I return to. And what I love about our job, there's a few things. One is that we're constantly learning the new machines and new techniques from each other, and also learning from our students. When you go to teach something to a group of people multiple times, there's going to be somebody there who's going to show you something you didn't know yet. So I love learning. That's why I really love my job. And I also love when you have that light bulb moment with people. You go to show them something and suddenly they understand it, or suddenly they realize, oh, this is so much better than the way I do it. So much faster. So that's my sewing history in a nutshell over the years. I am not a specialist in any one thing. I am somebody who loves to do all sorts of different things and likes variety, and but I do like to learn a lot about each thing that I get interested in.
So, how did you become an educator for SVP?
Well, I had sort of a different path, I think, than most educators like yourself. You've been working in the sewing industry for years and years and years. I was a chiropractor in private practice with my husband. And I also have worked in IT. I have a degree in computer science, and I worked for college doing writing web programs, and got into network security, and then actually ended up being the interim director of the department for a while, for 6 months. So I did that for, I think, 8 years. And I was looking to actually thinking about towards retirement, and I went to an event with Karen Charles, and she was up there teaching whatever, I don't even know what the project was now. She was teaching it, and I was thinking, man, I'd like to do that. That looks like fun. That's what I'd like to do. So I went up and spoke to her, and one thing led to another, and I retired and now work full time. Retired from one thing, went to something else, and have been working for SVP full time for about 3 years, 3.5 years, something like that. About the same time as you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We did join up about the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember sitting in an airport with you after one of our initial meetings, and we were just sort of feeling each other out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you went full time before I did.
Yeah,
But
for about
yeah,
2 minutes,
we
I
did,
think. 2 minutes.
did start about the same time. So now that you work for SVP and you mentioned about how much you love learning the new technology and all that kind of stuff, um, I know that sewing is a big part of our job for the education side. But do you still sew for fun for yourself?
I do when I have time. Since we've been home with COVID, I probably have done more sewing than previously when we were on the road. You know, when we're teaching, we are out on the road 2 to 3 weeks out of the month for people who don't know what our schedule's like. So when you get home, there's all that life stuff to catch up on, and like getting your car inspected and your dental appointment, and making samples for your next class. So there's not a whole lot of time for personal sewing, but it's something I love to do. So if I do have free time, that's probably where you'll find me, is at the sewing machine. But it's usually it was in short supply. But since we've been home for COVID, we started doing these virtual classes. So in essence, there's no travel time. We would fly out on Mondays. It might take the whole day to get there. Well, we're not doing that now. We're just walking to wherever our camera is and doing our classes. So there was more time, I think, built into the schedule to do some sewing, although we started doing a variety of classes instead of a handful. So that meant that the sewing that I did was for each of those classes to build up samples to show students, to illustrate whatever it was we were teaching. So it wasn't personal sewing, but I have squeezed in a little bit here and there. Right now I'm working on a quilt for one of my daughters that is getting married on Saturday, and it's on my long arm. I've gotten that far, and I've been working on it for 2 years.
Wow.
Off and on. So I'm hoping that by her 1 year anniversary, I'll get that quilt.
I understand you have some grandbabies on the way. How excited are you to make baby clothes, or have you already started making baby
I
clothes?
haven't, but it has definitely been in my mind. I was buying some fabric at the fabric store the other day, and I found this pattern had 8 different animal booties, and I could make those up, but it's so much faster to just use the pattern. So I'm going to first I'll start little booties, like little dogs and cats and birds.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
So we are going to be getting back on the road. Are you excited about getting back on the road now that things are starting to open up?
Oh yeah, I'm more than ready. I really like teaching, and having these virtual classes is better than nothing, but I would much rather be there. I like to be, running all over the room and helping individual people, seeing where they're going to go wrong before they go wrong, which you can't do as much virtually. You're just at a distance from your students, and you can't, it's not as personal. So I'd much rather be there in person, meeting people and chatting with them and hearing about their sewing story, and also getting out of my house and see new sights, and would be nice too. I'll
Well,
go anywhere right about now.
and plus, like you said, the light bulb moment. That is a wonderful thing to be in person for. I agree. I love when that happens. So, speaking about getting on the road and speaking about having some time at home, I'm sure you've got some samples that you would like to share with us. Can we take a look at a few?
Sure. I have some that are on my iPad that I will show you, that are just sort of random things that happen to be on there. And also, I'm seeing behind my head here from my a garment phase. I have this jacket. Actually, this was for my first convention. We were supposed to make something with the designs for that convention. So I made this jacket.
It's beautiful.
My husband calls it my Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts.
It is beautiful.
This is a sort of a quilted jacket that utilizes some of the embroidery designs that we were tasked to use for a convention, and Seminole piecing. What's interesting about this is that I was at sit down so you can see my head. I was at a retreat and wanted to make this jacket, but I didn't have the fabric I was looking for. So a lot of people think of machine embroidery as being sort of, the people that don't have embroidery machines think, well, oh, it's just sort of canned. It's not very creative. You want to have your own touch. And but it is, because it's the colors you choose and how you arrange things. And then if you have the software, the sky's the limit of creativity. But in this instance, the application I use for the software that some people may not think about is that of texturing fabric. I didn't have the fabric I wanted, so I created it with the embroidery. I had these the flower design that I wanted to use, and I wanted to somehow mimic those curvy lines in fabric, but I didn't have any with me. So I created this curvy line fabric in embroidery. So you can use it not just to like make flowers and ducks and words and stuff, but you can use it to texture your fabric and get the effect that you want. So that's garments. Let's see what I have here on my iPad. This is a pillow that I made just recently from our software. The new software, the My Sewnet software, has this new wizard that is so much fun to play with, the spiral wizard. And it's kind of, if you had a spirograph as a kid, it's kind of like that. You push some buttons and it makes different cool patterns. And so I made the central image, then took it into the quilt block wizard to do the micro quilting that's in turquoise behind the star shape. Then used some candle wicking for a frame, and then added the crystals after the fact. So that wizard is so much fun to play with.
It really is.
And it's so easy to use. It's not like it. Some of the things you do with the software can be, you can use it on a very sort of superficial level and do, combine designs and put some words and things like that, and just use it very simply. But it is so powerful. The more you dig into it, the more things you can find to do, and just, like I said, the sky's the limit. So the next picture, this is our ribbon, one of our ribbon embroideries that I think you did something similar, and we were not even talking to each other about it. I pieced together some leftover black and white fabric to use to make it into an applique, and put the applique underneath the ribbon embroidery, and then took the cat's face, or the cat from the Super Designs, and just pulled the face off with the software and plopped that down. And then use our new serger to do rolled edge around the ruffle to do the ruffling, and the double welting foot to do the double welts to frame the cat. And then this is a sample I used for our zipper class for a decorative zipper installation. We teach a 90-minute virtual zipper class to show you different things you can do with zippers, and a decorative installation like this, where it's kind of external to the, we're used to zippers kind of being on the inside of fabric, like they're kind of covered up except for the teeth. This is like showing everything plus some added stitching. This is a photo stitch that I did with the software a long time ago of my husband. Just shows you something you can do quickly with the My Sewnet software, the photo stitch wizard. It's just a matter of importing a JPEG and basically clicking next, and then stitching it out. There's not
pretty much.
The only twist to this is that you can do it in full color. You can do it sepia toned. You can do it. There's another mode that looks kind of like cross stitch, and I'm forgetting what that's called. And you can do it monochrome. And I chose monochrome, but still monochrome. They wanted me to use, I think, 8 or 9 different colors of shades of black and gray. And this is just navy blue. It's one color thread to do the whole thing. So even with one color thread, you can get something that's photorealistic. And this is a table topper that is a little bit interesting in that I took one of the patchwork designs in our, it's in a lot of our embroidery machines, not just the top of the line. And it would create one of these squares. So I took the design, and in the software, as you're going through the motions of making it, it's kind of like stitch and flip. First of all, it stitches down a template, and each triangle or square has a number, so that you put number 1 down first, then you put 2 on top of that, it stitches it down, you flip it over, then you go to 3 and 4, kind of like paper piecing or stitch and flip if you're used to that. Well, I took the design, made it bigger, and then brought it into the software and created the lines, so it was all done in the hoop. Then the central star is felted. That was a separate embroidery hooping, and then sewed it on afterwards. And this is from my bag making obsession. I made this a while ago, and there's the sort of common thread is my love of piping. There was piping on the jackets you saw. There's piping on my quilts. There's piping on this purse. I think almost everything's better with piping. And then this is another bag that I made, and my daughter who's getting married on Saturday. And then here's some quilting I did when I first got my new long arm. What I did is to get so I could get to know it, I took 2 old sheets and a fleece blanket and loaded that whole thing up. And I did the whole sheet. It was like a queen size sheet. I did doodles, I did pebbles, I did circles, I did everything, filled that thing up to try to get to know how that machine worked or works. Then the next step, I knew from my experience of trying to quilt on a domestic machine, not a long arm, is that when you go from doodling to actually working on a quilt, it's like all of a sudden, oh, this is harder than I thought it was going to be after all that doodling. So I decided to buy a panel, the Stream Big panel, and practice my stitching on that, and then go to a quilt where I had actually done the piecing, because there's a lot more time invested in that, and I wouldn't want to mess that up. So this is the panel that I did right after I got the long arm, after I did a whole queen size sheet of doodles. And then this is a quilt that I made a while back, and that was quilted on my diamond even before the Epic came out. So it's a queen size quilt that I did quilt on, the diamond. And this is a coat that I made recently. That quilting was actually my very first quilt that I tried to quilt myself, and parts of it were so bad I never finished it. So I cut it up and made it into a jacket.
Well, it looks great.
The better parts.
Yeah, looks awesome.
Thanks. And that's a jacket I already showed. And then this is just some decorative stitches that you take in, and sewing stitches that you can take into embroidery and make different beautiful patterns with. And then this is a quilt that I made for my other daughter that got married 2 years ago, and she did get that quilt on her first year wedding anniversary. So I didn't get it done in time. And that was quilted on the fabric frame. We have a fabric frame that you can put your sewing machine on. So it's kind of like having a long arm, but it's 5 feet wide. So it's great for people that don't have room for a long arm, or they're on a budget. So the 5-foot frame is much less expensive, much smaller. And you can put your machine on it. The bigger the throat space of the machine, the more you can quilt on without moving it. With COVID, I had another daughter staying with me, and she helped me clean out my basement because it was such a huge job. I didn't want to take it on. She kind of kicked me in the butt to do it, and helped me paint and wash the floor and do all that stuff. So then I had enough space to get a long arm. So I probably have a long arm only because of COVID, because otherwise I would have not had the room. I would have had to kick my husband out if I wanted to have a long arm. But now we're still happily married. And I have a long arm in my basement. But this particular quilt was quilted on the fabric frame. It's a king size quilt. And I did do the cornerstones are two fish that it's this embroidery design, sort of like the Pisces astrological symbol, because my daughter and her husband got married. They had a beach wedding. So we had a beach theme and that's why the colors, it's kind of beachy. Beach theme in the cornerstones, and then the colors and everything to, commemorate their wedding.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's about it. But I'm hoping that this next quilt will go faster on the long arm, but I'm kind of thinking we're going to start traveling again soon, and there might be some big gaps where that thing's not being worked on. Although I am working on videos to post for SVP on different aspects of the long arm, like how to load it, setting the tension, threading it, the different optional feet that we have, rulers, maybe some other things. So
excellent. So something to look forward to. Woo! All right. Well, thanks, Nancy, for interviewing with me today. Now that we're traveling and getting back into the traveling, how can people get a hold of you, whether they want to book you or ask questions or anything like that? What is the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, I am Nancybronsteinsews. So you can contact me through Facebook or instant message me. And for those people that are looking for educators to come to their store, you would have used the usual channels. Nikki and I both are full-time educators, and we would love to come to your store, especially now. After being home for a year and a half, well, we just want to get out.
We're ready.
We'd love to come to your store. So you talk to your rep and set us up, and we'll be there in flash.
Okay. Well, thanks so much. It's always fun to talk to you and see your samples. And this will be posted on both FAF and Viking?
It will be posted on the Educator page for FAF and Viking. And it also will be on my YouTube page. Probably the easiest place to find it would be on my YouTube page, Nancybronsteinsews, in the Educator folder.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks so much. And we'll talk to you everybody soon. And bye.
Thanks, Nikki. Bye-bye.